see you, buddy.
Hello, and welcome to our Tuesday evening workshop. We're going to be going over the audit presentation first. Thank you very much for joining us. If you both can introduce yourselves and then get started.
Tracy Roy, Finance Director.
Ron Smith, Principal, R.H.R. Smith & Company.
So tonight we're going to be going over the fiscal year June 30th, 2024 audit. You had received that a couple months ago. What you have in front of you, correct, it's this one right here that you had received a couple months ago. What you have in front of you is the CFA, which we just finished off, and I printed a copy and gave them to you tonight. But we will be going over the actual act for tonight.
So I'm Ron Smith, Principal with R.H.R. Smith & Company. I have the pleasure of working with 70 other professionals. We do over half the municipalities, half the school systems in the state of Maine, and 14 of 16 counties, and a host of other governments. So we know a lot about who you are, what you do, and kind of the direction of the world of government heading, in the state of Maine. So we're here to present the 6/30/24 audit, and in front of you, you have some slides that came out of a 100-plus page document that we don't want to go through because I know you got a busy agenda tonight. So we pulled some slides out, that were really the talking points, of that. And the first slide you're looking at is the budget to actual, for the city, for the general fund. This is just the general fund of the city, which is the day-to-day operations of city government and school government. So you can see the $157 million that was budgeted, the $166 million that was actually collected, which leaves you with about $9 million of over collections from what you thought going into your budget year. A lot of that was school. So I had the pleasure of doing the school presentation last month. I think it was early February, end of January, within the past month. A lot of that was a school collection for some intergovernmental services for there, but the city's collections came in, higher there as well. So yeah, that's certainly something, that has been consistent at the city. And probably to back up a little bit, you received our highest opinion, which is an unmodified opinion for the audit for 6/30/24, the school as well. And we do two audits. We do a financial statement audit and we do a federal compliance audit because the city spends more than $750,000 a year in federal funds, predominantly running through the school, but the city's got some big programs too through Public Works and other various programs here at the state. We had no issues with question cost or anything like that, so you had a clean opinion from us for the compliance audit as well. So I'm just going back to a little housekeeping. It's not really a slide that we put in here. We focus more on the math, but that's just one of the housekeeping rules. I wanted to go back to it first. So there's a comparison for revenues. Expenditures, $200 million budget, $184 million, spent $20 million over, under, make that clear, under budget. A lot of unfilled positions, certainly is that both at the city and the school, certainly making up a lot. The one obviously thing that sticks out up there, as you all can see, is human services. There was certainly an influx of claims in 6/30/24, that led to that. So here's your general fund equity as of 6/30/24. And the city has a policy where it will keep, you'll see it on the next slide, keep a target fund balance, of your operating budgeted, actual revenues for the city of 8%'s the floor, 12% is the ceiling. You're at your ceiling with your fund balance. You're right at that, a little over that 12%. So that's a better place to be, certainly, than under. Last year, you were under that. So, and largely because the city fund balance went up from $1.4 million from the year before, that kind of put you over your target fund balance. But you can kind of see the comparison that you have up there. And the two biggest ones to focus on are certainly the restricted and the unassigned. The unassigned is the city of $28 million, which again is $1.4 million from the year before. And the $16 million was the school, which was a planned spend down by the school of a little over $900,000. So the assigned fund balance is made up a lot of reserve accounts for workers' comp, unemployment, basically a lot of your benefit claims that you have there. The good news you'll see in here is your workers' comp claim went down. It's got a liability still, but it went down, $1.4 million, and you'll see that on the next slide. So here's in thousands, which really means you had $69 million, of fund balance, and that was the slide before. Just to give you a synopsis, about the general incline of your fund balance as opposed to decline. And largely, you're going to see, look in 2020, look in 2024, we're doing, when you do over 230, 40 municipalities in the state of Maine, a lot of people are in budget season right now. I understand I'm preceding a budget presentation from you all. They want to look in the crystal ball and say, can you prognosticate what our fund balance is? And what we're seeing right now on 6/30/25, we're starting to see for the first time that bell curve stabilize, because you're looking at COVID years right there. And it really isn't, for lack of a better way to say, a fair representation, because we're still coming out of COVID. And you can see that bell graph going up because a lot of services were halted. There's some, for lack of a better word, artificial stimulus money put in out there. And what we're seeing for the first time is 25 is we're starting to see some fund balance going down this year, and some of it was a calculated planned spend down, but some of the businesses returning to normal. It's probably the best way I can say it, and services are returning to normal too. So, and that's a pretty good graph to kind of give you an indication. Well, what happened from 20 to 24? COVID, and you're going to start seeing, I think over the next few years, the level off or that going down. Next one. So here's your percentage of the fund balance, compared to, to other people. I think one thing of note, I believe everybody, with the exception, of the city of Lewiston, was still working through their 6/30/23 audit. So congratulations to the city of Lewiston with the trauma that you went through on 6/30/24 for the city and the school department to sit here talking about an audit presentation, I think is hats off to the city of Lewiston. So your target fund balance, as I said, Lewiston, you're at 12% is where your target is, based upon, your fund balance policy, 8 to 12%. You're at 14. You're a little higher than that. Okay, but you can see where you compare yourself to other municipalities. I don't like to compare yourself. Lewiston's a unique city. Other municipalities are unique in their own way. I'm not a big fan. I know it's a nice statistic. I know it's a nice graph. How do you kind of line up against other municipalities? Be Lewiston, stay to Lewiston. Don't worry about what some of your counterparts are doing. So it's like almost mixing apples and oranges. Your workers' comp reserve, as I said, you still have an unfunded liability, $3.4 million. The good news is it was 4.7 last year, so that went down based upon the actuarial valuation of it. So that's headed in the right direction. So that's good news. So, and that, as you can see, it has gone up, for the past 3 years. So it's nice to see that on the decline. Next. Debt per capita, always a schedule that we like to put in there. What's your population? What's your debt? What's it related to? And as far as other municipalities, that's probably an interesting graph that I feel is a worthy comparison, just to kind of see, what Lewiston, has for debt per capita out there, so you can kind of see where you fit in. And Lewiston's at that $4,200 debt per capita per person. Next.
And that concludes the slides. Any questions?
Councilor Chittum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are all these slides in the financial report that you gave to us several months ago?
No.
Can we get copies of these?
I can forward this to you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, I do have a question for you that may be a little off topic, but you're an expert and you can give us some insight in this. The city has a policy wherein we do not borrow any more than 80% of the amount of money that we have retired over the average of the past 3 years. That's been a guiding policy for us for over 10 years now. The Finance Committee is looking at alternative ways to monitor or even control the amount of money that we borrow on an annual basis. And I'm looking to you for any suggestions that you might have for other mechanisms than taking a percentage of the debt that's been retired that we could use to control how much money we
So
borrow.
here'd be my first response, is that policy that you're discussing, how old is it? How
Say-
old? 10 years. Did I just hear 10 years is how old the policy is?
About.
The world has changed since 10 years ago, so I'll start with that. So the state has a statute out there of what your limitation is. There's a few extenuating factors, because of like national growth and schools and things like that. So you can actually come up with the math, to what that is. So the first thing that I would do if I was the city is take that statute, see where the city falls in, based upon the statute, and it's like based on your valuation. And there's some excluding factors on that. See what that math is. Apply that to your policy. What you're going to find out is debt is going to be a huge, huge vehicle for any government to access over the next 3 to 4 years. Well, at least it was before the world started turning upside down over the past few months, with the new administration in there and kind of them taking a fresh look at what that is. But everybody forgets back in 2021, the largest infrastructure package this country has ever seen got passed, and that money's still out there. Okay, it's still out there. We're not sure what's going to happen with it, but we still believe it's going to get to you. Still believe. So, and I'm just going to throw this out there, which is why I would say look at your policy. If you have money that you can go borrow for 0% or 1% on the dollar, and you have a policy that's going to prohibit you from doing that, that's not a good policy. And that's what you're going to see a lot of this money. It's going to be disguised as grants. It's going to be disguised as low-interest loans, forgivable loans. And I'd hate to see the city of Lewiston have its hands tied with good available money out there because your policy, is preempting you. So I would just see kind of what's compliant for the state. And that's been a statute for a long time, and then see how that applies to your statute. Your policy, and I think that's where your conversation starts. So,
I have done that, and I've looked at the state limitations. They're considerably larger than our policy is very
Sure.
conservative with respect to the state
Yeah.
law. And I will point out that the policy is not ironclad. We
Mm-hmm.
can overturn that, as we have done several times over the past 10 years, with a supermajority of five votes of the council.
is there something that drove that policy 10 years ago to get birthed?
I was too young to remember that.
It was due to the fact that we carried a large amount of debt
Yeah.
for the city, and ultimately, we actually downsized our government pretty considerably as well.
Yeah.
As part of that reckoning in order to
Yeah.
balance what we had borrowed.
Yeah, debt's a good vehicle. It really is, and it's even a better vehicle at 0% or 1% interest. So that's even a better vehicle. So whatever I can do, to be as a sounding board, please, reach out to Tracy. I'd be more than happy to help the city.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. Also on the Finance Committee, as my esteemed colleague over here, part of the problem we have is we're paying our debt down, and 80% becomes unmanageable.
I'm sorry?
80% becomes unmanageable. We don't have enough debt. We don't get enough money. We're going to cut $9 million this year because we don't have enough debt. We had more debt.
So that's a problem with your policy right there.
Would have a bigger ceiling to
Sure.
work with and do things,
Yep.
to get things done. So that's why we're trying to find a different mechanism
Sure.
that would allow us some either flexibility, maybe not without having to go get debt, but,
Yep.
and as it seems now, like you just said, if the price of debt was right, having debt's not a bad thing if it's going to allow you to do. We have an LCPI, someone's got a copy here with things we've been pushing down the road for years. And we're never going to fix it unless we go out and borrow, and people don't want to borrow because of the 80% rule, but we're going to run out of money, quite frankly, to manage even our operational budget here in the next 4 or 5 years. if
And
we're
is
not
that what's
careful.
prompting this conversation? You're looking into the crystal ball, just saying, we can't sustain this. Yeah.
Obviously, it drops to zero. As that 80% is applied and
Yeah.
it's not overridden.
Yeah.
Within 10 years, our borrowing limit's going to be $127.
Yeah. So, whatever I can do to help, look forward to it.
Councilor Najin, did you have something else?
Yeah, so one point that I wanted to touch with Director Roy, and then I'll have a question for you as well, sir. Director Roy, last year, I know that we have we've underfunded our self-insured workman's comp piece. But can you remind me what was the commitment last year from the city council? What was the amount that we moved in? I think it was considerable.
I'm not gonna be able to look it up on there, because it's on my computer. I will probably have to get back to you on that, because it's in the budget under the workers' comp. We transfer over all those funds to the workers' comp account, and then we pay our bills out of that account. And we transfer an additional, I believe, 20,000 from fund balance to cover additional funds, like the administration fee of workers' comp. I believe it's 20 in fund balance.
It's all right if you can't find it right now. I just seem to remember.
200,000.
200,000.
So 200,000 we transfer from fund balance into that reserve, and then funds from the workers' comp, from all of the other departments, utility and all that, gets funded into our workers' comp fund. And we pay out of our bills there, and the remaining stays in there and keeps on getting interest and collecting, so that we hopefully at one point will start to see that lower down. We did close out, I believe, 2 large cases in '24. We still have a couple more to go that are older cases. So as we see those getting closed, hopefully we'll start to see the decrease of the unfunded.
And what was the number for the underfunded portion currently? Was that 3.4 million? Is that correct?
3.4 million.
Okay. Okay, perfect. I mean, not perfect, but, and just to speak to kind of the point with the borrowing piece, you know, ultimately, I think what we've looked at for a long time is managing our debt in order to actually be sustainable, but what we've found is that it puts us in a situation where we can't necessarily invest in our future sometimes. You know, we have a 70-year maintenance plan for our sidewalks, which is a long time. So,
Yeah.
you know, pieces like that, thinking about how we balance what we borrow versus what the estimated return is on the investment based on quality of life and desirability, right? So,
I'd be interested, though, you know, just as you guys just said, as you guys are looking out with that crystal ball, kind of what that road looks like with the math in it, and that's why I say I'd be interested in learning more about that.
Yes, further questions about the audit from Mr. Smith. Councilor Gallant.
One more quick one. When you said if we could borrow at 0 or 1%, what would your cutoff be? 4, 5, 6, 7? I mean,
Percent?
yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, I'm just saying is,
Whatever
you
you
know,
can get it for the cheapest rate, and Lewiston is good at that, and so are a lot of municipalities that go out to private borrowing.
Okay.
You know, which is what you do, you go hit the market.
All right.
You know, so typically right now, it's 5%.
Right,
you know.
5%, that's what I thought.
I'm not sure, I just saw 4.6 a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not sure I'm prepared to say good times are here, you know, and we're gonna start seeing it go down, but I truly think that you're gonna see those interest rates over the next 6 months go back down to the 4% range and start creeping back down. You're just not gonna see it for a few months, for sure. So, and I got some pretty good intel on that.
Thank you.
You all set? All right, well, thank you so much. We appreciate you being
It's
here.
been a pleasure. Yeah, look forward to
Thank you
following.
very much.
thank you very much.
Now, just-
And excellent job, Director Roy, in having that
Thank you.
audit prepared and out the door a year in advance of many other municipalities.
We are now up for the budget overview. We have Director Roy joining us again, along with our Administrator, Brian O'Malley.
Yes,
Please kick us off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you should have all received your copy of your budget in your slots today. So we're just going to go over this a little bit. We've got a slide.
Sorry, 1 second. Did these lights turn off? Or
Apparently they did.
yeah. Thank you very much.
So we're just going to go through this a little bit, and then in the pursuing weeks, we have a schedule which I've provided to you. Then we'll have the different department heads here, and our next meeting will be Thursday, where we'll go over personal services, fringe, capital outlay, parking, general government, property, and public works. So as you can see, we're looking at a 5.5% for total municipal expenditures increase, up a little over $3.3 million from last year. And I had asked all the department heads not to ask for any new positions or new programs. We wanted to do what we could to keep the tax rate down. Director Roy and I went through a lot of their requests, and you can see we cut $9.6 million from the request, and a lot of these were positions that I'm going to present to you that are frozen. We had some of the salaries that were covered by that clean energy TIF that you folks approved a little bit ago. PSY workers who work for the police department, we're using opioid money for that. Paving, we've had discussion about paving. There was a request of, I think it was a little close to $5 million. We've reduced it by $2 million. And then there was some equipment through MIS, our IT department. So we were able to cut $9.6 million from the request, and also move, and you'll see this as we go through this, about $6.9 million to the fund balance. And this describes those positions. These are my recommendations to all of you. We're going to freeze 2 police officer positions, several positions at Public Works, 2 Class C highway workers, Class B highway worker, a mechanic, and 2 temporary mechanics. I will say that we have hired some mechanics after the changes to the contract. We're actually getting people to apply for Public Works based on the changes of the contract. However, I think I want to say they have 9 or 11, but we'll have that for sure when Kevin's here on Thursday. Open positions. So we're doing what we can to keep the tax rate down. That's why I'm making these recommendations. I've told my department heads for police and public works at this time not to fill those positions, these 5 positions, until we get through the budget and see what you folks, your final decision is. And this gives you a little bit of an overview of what's causing some of our changes with our expenditures. You look at the joint agencies, transit has gone up, 911's gone up, airport is flat. Supplies, a lot of this we don't have control over. The cost of fuel has gone up. The big contractual services, you'll see as well, that's the new contract we have is, I think, a little over $1 million increase in contractual services. Fixed charges would be things like electricity and insurance. A lot of it, the stuff that Tracy and I can't cut and present to you as a lower amount that we really don't have any control over it.
Turn the lights off.
Well, I could turn off a couple more lights. That's true, I could do that. Revenues are up. I think the big number there when you look at is the state revenue sharing. Last year we had discussions over how much to use from what the state is allocating. Director Roy and I are recommending 95% of the state allocation, so that's an increase of $460,000. I think it's a little over 12 million is what they're forecasting for us to receive. So really, I think we're only about $500,000 that we're using as a buffer. We'll discuss this further, but we have concerns over the lack of federal funds that may be coming into the state, and will that have a trickle-down effect to us? So we just, we went with a 95%. We can discuss that at a later time. So we're looking at, $460,000 in addition from last year. So you have capital expenditures, self-explanatory. Monday, the 17th, we'll be meeting with the school to go over their budget as well. That's, if you all folks remember, we'll be meeting at the Green Ladle on March 17th, and we'll go over a lot of their asks as well. And then we have unassigned fund balance. I think Mr. Smith was talking about the ceiling and the floor, the 12% and 8%. So I think you folks will need to decide where you want to be. I think with what we're presenting, it's just a little over 10. Is that correct, Director Roy?
10.01.
10.01. So it's in the middle of that. So I think you folks can have a little leeway with that, but realize that it's a silly policy of between the 8 and the 12%. Yeah, so this next slide shows it's 10.1 or 10.01. And we can go over that as well. And I've said this a couple times to some of you informally, that I've tried to make the easy cuts. I asked the department heads not to ask for anything new. We made, Director Ryan and I made the decisions about the paving. I know paving in the streets and the sidewalks are a concern, but this is what we're presenting to you. So this is where the difficult decisions are being made in terms of what do you want to cut, or if you want to add anything, it's going to have the effect on the tax rate. So we look at the total revenues for the school department are up, and I think it'll be explained to you a little bit when we go to the school committee in terms of their expenditures, what they're carrying forward, in terms of the revenues and what they want to keep. So I think when we go there, we'll have that discussion with the school department, and Director Roy can talk about that as well as we move forward with this budget process. And those of you, I think, are aware, maybe you're not, because I know you kind of had a whirlwind when we did this last year when you first came in, but this is part of the charter requirement where the consumer price index for urban Northeast is what we have to base our tax levy on. So right now it's 3.5 up from 2.6 as of 12/31/24. So our increase right now is 6.68% increase. So we're supposed to go by what the consumer price index of urban Northeast is for our increase, unless we get a 2/3 majority. So that's in the city charter. I think the other conversation we had was a policy, but this is city charter in terms of a tax increase. And our assessed value has gone up. We would have liked to thought it went up, would have gone up more, but we have lost some properties that were taxable in the previous year. The Peck building, I don't know if you're aware that the 4th floor is now turning into, the county has purchased that. Where the DA's office used to be next to the courthouse is the old Key Bank building has now been sold to the county, or the state, excuse me, so that's no longer taxable. We have the New England Clean Energy Connect, but we sheltered some of that for the TIF. So I'm glad it's gone up, but it didn't go up a whole lot, but I think it's because it didn't go as much as we would have liked, because we've actually lost a lot of properties that used to be taxable that aren't taxable anymore.
If we can hold questions until the end, that would be great. Thank you.
And I will have, assessing and the directors and stuff like that for the different sections as we go through this. I think we had a discussion last week about the increase from the county tax. It's 23 cents on the tax rate. So if this slide just shows how much they've gone up every year. FY17, 2.69. 26.05, the big one, 25 was 16.1, and now 14.5% increase this year. The city of Lewiston in the past, we've actually had zero. During a COVID year or two, we've been able to hold it to 0%, but we have had to experience it, but we've never had the experience of what the county is seeing for increases. So this is the slide you've all been waiting for. With the city projected $1.12 increase, the school, for the numbers that we've received at this point, is a 46-cent increase. From the county is a 23-cent increase, for a total of $1.81, or a 5.68% increase to the tax rate from last year. So last year it was $31.77, and we're moving it up to $33.58. Enterprise funds. I know we're going through a lot fast, but again, said we will. This is just kind of the introduction to it, and then you folks can read what you have in front of you. So for water, sewer, and stormwater, we are looking to have some projected ending cash. However, can you do the next slide? We're looking at the water utility. The revenues are down, but expenses are up. But we feel like with the cash we have, that we should be able to have no rent increase on the water. For those of you who pay attention to your water bill, they have not increased for many years. However, that is now caught up to us. So we're looking at, sewer, not water, sewer is caught up to us, that we're recommending a 20% rate increase. A lot of that has to do with the revenues and the expenses not working out as we'd like them to. So there'll be a 20% rate increase recommended. We actually have worked on this quite a bit. It was initially presented to us as a 31% increase. But we're going to try to use the cash that we have. Yes, I see you, Mr. Mayor. So we're going to 20% rate increase, and that will be explained to you as well. And then we're looking at stormwater, also a 20% rate increase. And I think part of that issue is we have not had any increases in so long, as opposed to maybe doing a 2 or a 3%. Now and then we're getting hit with this 20% rate increase. Now, that being said, for a homeowner, I don't think the rate is going to increase that much, but it's more for our large businesses that have much higher stormwater and sewer rates, that they're really going to feel that effect of a 20% rate increase. And I will give thanks to everyone, although they're not here tonight. They will be here in preceding meetings, for everybody getting their budget, holding the line as best they could. In terms of what they submitted, I didn't have to have any backroom brawls or fights with anybody. They understood that last year there were a lot of additions made to the workforce, and that they were realizing that, okay, now we have to do what we can to move the city forward without increasing the tax rate any more than we can.
Thank you both very much. Appreciate all your hard work on this, and yes, thank you to all the employees and department heads. As you mentioned, Administrator O'Malley, we're going to have time to really dive in depth in future meetings, and also when we have the department heads present. But
Yes.
Any general questions now? Councillor Stoll.
Is the water increase already happening, or is it going to happen?
I misspoke. So water is not increasing, it's sewer and stormwater.
Sewer and
that are
okay.
increasing. And that has not happened yet. That will happen July 1st.
July, okay, thank you.
Well, I say that, it's what our final budget, what you folks agreed to. That's what we're recommending at this time.
Councillor Chittum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The $19 million increase in valuation, I'm assuming that's 45%, includes 45% only of the NECAC inverter station, because we've sheltered 55%?
Yes.
Okay, so that is actual, the valuation that would be reflected in the state valuation.
Yes, that was supplied by our chief assessor.
All right, thank you. The other comment I have is that any increase in the water would have to be approved by the Public Utilities Commission?
Correct, and it wasn't water, I misspoke. It's
Right.
sewer and stormwater.
I wanted to clarify that. When you say stormwater, that's the stormwater fee that's assessed at $60 per residence?
Affectionately known as the rain tax, I believe.
The rain, well, I'm trying to avoid that term. So that will be $63 then?
Yes, 20% increase. yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. And by the way, I want to echo the mayor's great appreciation to you and your staff for doing all the hard work. You said it was the easy cuts, but I doubt that very much. I think it was difficult for you to bring in a budget that was considerably lower than the department heads had
And I will
wanted.
pass that along to the department heads. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Harriman.
Thank you. So on those slides for the sewer and stormwater, with where it says the revenue projections, is that under the new rate?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Correct. It includes the 20%. So if the 20% is not approved, then the revenues will go down. So then we'll have to look at expenses, because at that point,
Yeah.
and you'll notice in Brian's memo, you'll see if the 20% wasn't approved, you'll see what the cash will be in the negative for both sewer and stormwater. That was put in the memo.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Najin.
So just first and foremost, thank you both very much for your work, and also all the other directors. Can we possibly get a list of the properties that were removed from the tax rolls for the past year? If we could get that sent out to us, I'd appreciate that. I understand the process doesn't actually involve any feedback from the municipality at all. It's a state designation, but when properties do get removed from the tax rolls, I think it's important that we know which ones they are and who owns them.
I'll reach out to the assessor.
Thank you so much. So as far as the county tax increase, obviously it's not in line with any apparent service that we're receiving or with the inflation rates. So I guess the question is, do we have any ability to negotiate or appeal that tax at all? And I guess we could talk to I mean, they've set their budget at this point. So
Correct, it's set, and so we're kind of locked in. There's nothing we can do with that. The only two that we can try to deal with is our side, city side and the school side. It's my understanding from some conversations with, I think it was Councilor Chittum, that the majority of the driving expense was the jail over at the county.
Interesting. Okay. And we were just talking about the adjusted billing for all of the services that we provide, and water services we're not looking at increasing our
Water is
rates.
going to stay the same. It's
Okay.
sewer and stormwater.
And is there cause to increase the water charges? I understand that it may not be business friendly, so especially if it's an industry that relies on water.
And it's a
for-
much more difficult process to go through the Public Utilities Commission to get a rate increase.
Okay. And this is just a question concerning how many positions that we've budgeted for that are currently unfilled. Do we have an idea of how many?
We do. I can tell you that there's 8 at the police department, and that's why I froze 2. I want to say there's 9, or it might be 11, because they've had some retirements at Public Works. But I think it might be 9, and that's why I frozen what I froze, based on the fact that they have been able to hire some mechanics. And 2 of those part-time ones from the mechanics usually would be students that would hire for the summer, just trying to kind of, train them and say, hey, what a great place. We want to work here once I've gotten my certification or I've graduated from whatever program I'm in. So we've cut those. I really don't want to cut anyone who's actually employed. That's why I went after the positions.
Understood. So City Hall, are there unfilled positions? From my understanding, economic development is now being completely funded for its staff pieces by the
Yeah, and they are
TIF, right?
full. The last, I think, person, actually, no, they have one position that's now rehab coordinator, but that's a CDBG funds that, so that's.
If we could possibly just get a breakdown of like all the positions
Yep,
that
I
aren't
can-
filled,
I
that
can
would
get
be
that to you.
helpful.
Yep.
And then, I wasn't clear on this last year, and I'm still not completely clear on it. So the unspent funds that it looks like are going into the general fund for unfilled positions, is that what happens to them, or do they sit separate? So ultimately, for the positions that we could not hire for, or the positions that were sat vacant that we budgeted for, where does that money go?
So that goes into the fund balance.
It does go into
So
the
where
fund
you
balance.
saw when we did the presentation earlier, the difference of how our expenditures came in less, our revenues came in higher, that difference goes into the fund balance. That's why our fund balance is at 14.01% at the end of the fiscal year.
Perfect. Okay, those are my general questions for right now.
And
Thank you.
I'll email that to the group, the things that Councilor Najin has asked for.
I do have just one more question. Concerning the 2 frozen positions, so basically, we unfroze those 2 police positions last year?
Well, those are the 2, you created 2 new ones.
2 new ones, okay.
And those are the ones I've frozen based on the fact that the chief has 8 open positions right now. And the likelihood of him filling all of those, I did tell the chief, and he can have this discussion when he comes here, that I said, if you're able to fill those 6, I would go back to the council and see if they would unfreeze those 2. But the reality is, it's going to take them some time to get those 6 positions. My hope is, once that new police station opens up, that they'll be able to use that as somebody who may be saying, oh, I want to go somewhere else, and choosing between us and maybe some surrounding communities, that would tip them in favor of coming to Lewiston.
Gotcha. So we had created 2 new positions and 3 new positions and unfroze 2 positions last year, correct?
We unfroze 2, and I thought we created.
1.
And we created 1. So
Okay.
we actually gave them 3 that they didn't have in last year's budget. So now I've frozen 2, which is giving them at least a +1.
And I guess the question is, those positions were never filled, correct? So the 3 positions the 2 that we unfroze and the 1 extra one that we created.
Correct.
We never had in place.
No, he's
for-
had a bunch of retirements, so he just hasn't been able to keep up with filling those positions.
I mean, yeah, I'll discuss it with the chief when he gets here, but I am concerned, obviously, with,
And as
Police
being,
staffing.
as being the former police chief, this is not what I wanted to do, but I realize, we need to have the bodies for the chief to do something extra as opposed to just answer calls. But I have to have the reality of it I don't think he can fill those 8 positions within this next fiscal year. I hope I'm wrong, Councilor Najin, but I just don't think he can.
and we could always set up a supplemental budget, I suppose, as well, correct? If,
We could see what we have in the fund balance in terms of, do we have other open positions that aren't filled? And that's why Director Roy
if
is sitting
somehow
next to me.
we have
Yes.
10 officers who come in and say, we really want to work here.
I think we
Okay.
could figure that out, yes.
Thanks.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. Yeah, I would encourage, just as you said, if he fills those 6, and same thing with Public Works, if they can fill the positions that aren't frozen, and then they have potential candidates for more, they could come back to us and we can see if we can take something out of the fund balance or what we can
And
do.
you folks have done that before. I don't know if you recall, where we'll hire somebody 6 months into the fiscal year, just kind of lessen the impact. So that's something we can do. It would be great if every position was filled and everybody wanted to come work here, but the reality is I don't think that's going to happen, so that's why I don't want to raise the tax rate any more than we have to.
And to be clear, we're not eliminating those positions, we're simply freezing them.
That is correct.
Right, yeah, there's no cause for alarm. Councilor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank Director Roy for a great audit. It sounds like we as a town are on top of things, and that means you're on top of things, so thank you. Thank you both for all the hard work at cutting, and all the department heads who probably cringed, which is what we always do when someone takes the knife to us, but I do appreciate that. I guess my only question this evening would be, is bonding. Have we sold all of our bonds currently, and does that affect our current bond rate?
We have not. So last September, we sold the 2023. So this September, we plan on selling the 2024s. And then we have, of course, the 2025s, which will go the September after. We do that in order to give them an additional 12 months to start spending because of the issue with making sure we are spent down within 24 months.
So my other question would be, does that affect our 80-20 rule where they have not been issued, or do we get credit because we've approved them?
No, because we are using the 80% for the retired ones. So you'll see in your LCIP book, the year is on top of the 3 years, so you can see what's retired. So it doesn't use the ones that we haven't done yet. We do have to disclose that we have had those amounts approved, and they are not bonded yet in the POS when we go to sale.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Sol.
So under the tax rate, I got to piece back on, sorry, where it says the increase for this year, the $33.58, an increase of
Can you
$1.81.
go back to that slide, please?
It's on page 7 of the book, if anybody wants to follow along. My question is, the $33.58, that would be if we approved everything in the budget. So is that the same for the school? That increase is if they
Correct.
approve everything? And then the county, is that one already set?
That's right.
So county is set?
County is set.
Okay, that was my
And so
question.
the increase is $1.81.
Okay,
I just want to make sure that's clear, because it sounded like you said at $33.58, but it's an increase of $1.81 that
Right,
would bring
the
us
tax
to
rate
$33.
of-
Okay.
yeah. It's just, the only one that is set is the county at this
Yeah,
moment?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Najin.
Just as a quick question, when I was looking at the revenues, I noticed that the parking garages had seen a decrease of $191,000 in revenue. Could you just name the reason for that? Because I know we put a
TD
lot of
Bank.
investment.
TD Bank is no longer there. I mean, you have to remember,
So
we've
we
lost
lost-
6,000 workers who were
Yeah.
in the Bates Mill, who were parking down in our downtown, who are no
And
longer
supporting the
there.
downtown businesses, absolutely. I was just trying to, get in my head what that amount was. Okay,
I mean,
perfect.
my hope is, once Continental Mill, once they start building those apartments, those folks are going to park in our Chestnut Street parking garage, and those revenues will come back, but, that's, several years away before I think that's going to happen, so.
Thank you.
Councilor Roy.
Thank you. Just want to say amazing work. Director, great audit. And I want to thank all of the department heads and you, Administrator O'Malley, for all your hard work. So I just want to do that. Thank you.
Any final thoughts from councilors? Councilor Chittum?
I just want to verify for everyone that the county has been set, the county operates on a calendar year, so their budget was approved in December, and that rate was passed on to us, and we have really no control over it. The city of Lewiston pays almost a quarter of the entire county budget. The budget is apportioned by valuation of the municipalities, the 16 towns in the county, and Lewiston, being the largest, pays 23.9% of the budget for the county. I will add here a editorial comment that some of the services that we are paying for, we do not use at all. We don't use the dispatch service, and aside from the jail component of the sheriff's department, we don't use the sheriff's department either. And those are the two, well, not 911, but the sheriff's department is a significant component of the county budget. State laws govern what we can and cannot argue, and I believe that the city filed suit against the county a number of years ago and lost that suit, and as we tried to argue that we're not using the services that we're paying for. But I did want the public to be aware that Lewiston pays the lion's share of the county taxes. The county budget is based on a calendar year, and it's driven by, principally by the sheriff and the jail.
Councilor Gallant?
Thank you, Mayor. This is for fellow councilors. I hope that we can this year, because last year was new, take the time to look at what's going to happen on Thursday. It's nice to look ahead and work ahead, but please, let's all try to be prepared to have our questions, and if we know questions in advance, we talked about sending them to Director Roy or the department head so they can be ready to give us an answer, and they're not going to have to go back. We put a lot of things in the parking lot last year, which really ate up time towards the end, and I'd like to see us try to be more efficiently that way this year, so we can use the time to really figure out what we have to do. So I'd ask all of us to consider that. Thank you.
Last year was very different in that we considered new programs and positions, and we won't be taking that time this year. Yeah, I really appreciate both of your help, all the department heads, appreciate the counselors. Look forward to working with you to deliver a reasonable budget to the residents of Lewiston. Yeah, I don't think, just in closing here, I don't think anyone is expecting taxes to go down, but my hope is that we can come in at a reasonable rate while keeping all staff positions. So that's my goal here. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, just
Yes,
for the viewing public, the proposed budget that we've given to you folks will be online along with a copy of the audit tomorrow when folks are trying to look for it.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, Lewiston.